Is this the first time that something like that has been done in Telugu?
No.
In Telugu at least?
Possibly. I'm not familiar of it happening outside. If there is, then it has, but I was not aware of it. It's quite a common practice to do overseas. I mean, there's technologies out there now. We did like a bit of a Heath Robinson patch together. We'd love to have complete real-time updates, you know, tilt the camera, it moves up and so on. But a lot of it we were doing manual, we're measuring up by hand and then plugging the information into our laser scan. That was a total digital representation of the set, and then angling the camera, tweaking it, making sure that the composition is right, and then mixing it through to just cross-check, and yeah, that's fine. We did it on a few sets actually. We didn't just do it on the city centre, but we also did it on the King's Court areas. That was principally for a couple of reasons. One, because we were limited by the physical size of the set itself. You know, we only had like, it was about 190 metres that way, in the court, in the actual physical set. And there were some shots that we needed to bang the camera right back, like extended like 2-3 times through the wall, and get that very wide angle from backside through pillars in the profile angle, or come into where the statues are and have them in suggestion. So getting a physical camera up there, it's impossible to do because you're going to have to knock a hole through the studio wall, and Mr. Ramoji doesn't really like us doing that. So we had to digitally extend back, so therefore we had to work out the correct framing, the correct angle, composition, take our digital direct camera there, bang it forward. Okay, that's our XYZ location of where this needs to be. And then we've got the issues of perspective distortion because the lensing is going to change, so we have to adjust the lensing for that and shoot how many plates we needed to offset. So all that we calculated on set, on the spot, when the director's like, oh, it'd be nice to get a camera up there. I had to push that back and calculate it there on the spot, and then rush and give the notes, right, up there, shoot on that, this lens and so on. And it worked. Yeah, bit of mental calculation, but yeah, it worked.
I've interacted with quite a few cinematographers, and they always talk about getting that lighting right for the Indian skin tone, you know, to highlight the features of anything. But as a visual effects supervisor, do you also take that a lot into consideration? Yeah,
it's digital doubles, as one would call it, or you know, digital makeup or facial replicas, or whatever you want to call it. So it's not. It's lighting is one thing. So it's obviously when one tends to block a shot, let's say someone blocks a shot with in a live shoot, they wouldn't necessarily use the principal talent, they'd use a stand-in. So the DP would light for the stand-in, then they bring the stand-in out, and then they get the principal talent in and shoot the scene and so on. Similar thing works for us, so we get a stand-in and shoot reference, and then on live we'd actually shoot lighting references to make sure the physical lights that you've got, say for example in here, would be physically measured and calculated so that whatever we replicate back in the studio is matching exactly what we've got here. With regarding matching skin and skin tone and so on, that's, you know, depends on a couple of factors. It's kind of tough because which one, you know, when you reference any kind of image or anything like that, or any individual, you're actually shooting them from the real world. When you're dealing with them in film, they're always wearing makeup. So matching someone who's actually, you know, been alive and since passed away, getting a live reference is obviously very tough. So any singular reference that they have. So whenever you're doing any kind of digital makeup work, you have to mimic the fact that makeup is being applied to the actor already, so everybody's familiar with seeing him or her with makeup on already. So you have to, you know, not only build the skin texture and build the skin tone, but you also have to add digital makeup on them to make it look real as such, which is kind of tough to do. So all the little small nuances and small irregularities in someone, you know, little twitches, little tweaks, little kind of, you know, pop marks on the face, and you know, if they've got a scar, I've got one here, kind of thing, adding those sorts of things where the moles are, and that kind of, it's the irregularities. If it's too perfect, then something doesn't seem right. And the thing is, especially with recognizable talent, the audience by default is an expert at CG. It's the same deal with like working with fluid work. It's like, you know, the waterfall stuff and the fire pits that we did within the night shots, and also within what we lovingly call the oven scene.
What is that scene?
The oven scene is it was a cutaway, two or three shots that was in the Sivagami's entrance within King's Court. So literally, she's walking down slow motion, marching with the the babies and everything. And in the live set, they placed these fire pits and so on. And they placed them so close together because that was nice for that composition of that. And it was a totally green screen shot. Apart from the floor on this fire pits, it was totally green screen shot. So to keep the continuity in the placement, we measured up the same places of these fire pits and we extended it back. So we built digital versions of these, did fire simulations for all these things, had torches hanging from the walls and so on, and built this corridor accordingly and staged it down based on references that we took from the live show and also from our own custom work. Staged it up, built it, put it in, rendered it, okie dokie. Then it looked like she was standing inside an oven because the amount of fire pits travelling down there was so many. So all these fires just blended together. So my good God. I mean, I stood next to these fire pits when they were on. I mean, they were hot. So she would have melted. So hence the oven shot. It looks like she's gone inside a kiln. It's like that sari would combust. So thankfully that didn't happen, otherwise we'd be struck for a second part. So we designed the fire so it went up, down, up, down, up, down. So you didn't have just like a constant line and then offset, okay, the guy who staged it right wasn't perfect. So yeah, it wasn't perfectly straight. We created these irregularities just to kind of break up the shape and what have you. Same deal with the pillars and that kind of thing. So creating that fire, okay, we have reference of the live, so therefore we know the size, the scale, the speed, the strength, how much fuel is in there. So all that simulation we can do. Simulating things like fire nowadays is a lot easier than what it used to be back in the day. It used to be really tough.
I was going to ask you that fire versus water, what's very difficult?
Fluids is more tough. I mean, fire itself technically is a fluid. It's a plasma, so therefore it is technically a fluid. And the smoke simulations that you have, technically that is fluid simulation as well, because you've got the fire element, you've got the smoke element, which has got a viscosity within it, and that's interacting with air, so that's displacing it around just as much as water would displace around any other medium. It's a similar kind of technology. But the thing is, convincing people, fire is easier to convince somebody than water. Previously, they both were pretty tough to convince. Doing digital fire was kind of hard, especially explosions, getting that right. Nowadays, it's easier than what it used to be. I want to say easier, it's a case of we've got better systems to throw more data out, or more, the systems, the simulations themselves can be more complex. So therefore, it's giving a better result in the end. Fluid simulations, again, we can throw more data at it now. The simulations for there's one shot for when Sivagami is drowning in the river. She's been swept away, and you see the water falling back. That entire river was digitally replaced because originally it was alive. We shot it down in Kerala, and the water wasn't fast enough. It didn't look dangerous enough. She was swimming away and everything, and she had this prop baby with her, and it was risky. We had lots of crew on standby, ropes, guide ropes, and everything holding her back so she was safe. But the water itself did not aesthetically look meaty enough, so that entire water was replaced. That took days to simulate. days and days to simulate and days to render to get that fine detail. So you've got a simulation for the underlying water, you've got a simulation for the top water, you've got a simulation for the foam, you've got a simulation for the splashes. All of these need to gel in right. And the problem is, everybody is an expert. Whether you know it or not, every single one who watches any CG fluid work is an expert in computational fluid dynamics. Because everybody knows what it's supposed to look like. And if they don't know it, they don't realize it, but they know when something's wrong. It's the same deal with looking at a digital face. You're an expert at CG because you know what a face looks like. And you know what fire's supposed to look like. It's how things like miniature work struggles with things that are very, very tough to change the size of. Like if you're shooting, let's say you're shooting a galleon ship on the sea, you know, it's firing its cannons out the side. The galleon itself, you can shoot with, you know, scale factors. You know, it's like a 1/10 scale model or something like that. So all the texture work on the side, the paint work on the side is all 1/10 scale. All the cannons on the side, the little people on the top, the models are 1/10 scale, and it's lit at a power of 10, and it's shot with a 10 scale lens, and it's shot with a 10 scale shutter speed and shutter angle and so on, all this lot. So it's proportionate. But you can't scale fire. You can't scale water down. So that's the reason why miniature work looks weird when you start introducing things like real world elements of things you can't scale, like water and fire and smoke. So immediately the audience goes, something's not right. Something's not right in that shot, because they're used to seeing that scale in proportion to something that's X big. And if something looks off, then the entire shot, something's not right here. And it's the same deal with CG. If something doesn't appear to be exactly right, then the attention goes onto that, and you've lost them. So we struggle, we try, and you know, the amount of revisions that we went through for even like the smallest little trickle of water got so many revisions on it, because either we weren't happy or the director wasn't happy. So we polished and polished and polished to get it right. Some we managed, some we didn't. You know, put hands up to it. We tried our hardest with it, and you know, for the most part, it all worked. There were some which, like, we tried our best with it, and because the structure was so off, it just wasn't coming. So therefore, we cheated in composition. We either sourced stock to replace that element, or we placed like a branch, you know, and framed the shot accordingly, so it looked like it was intentional in the composition, but not. It's actually hiding something. Yeah. But there's some shots that we couldn't simply get away with. You know, there's some shots which were, you know, we knew were going to be tough. We knew they were going to be there, and there was no physical way we could get away with, you know, any 2D techniques to salvage it. There's one shot which we lovingly call the Angel Falls shot, which is the introduction to when Pravas has finally made it to the top of the waterfall. There's one that kind of goes over the top, camera comes around, you see the wedge, the top ledge. It's basically revealing the top, so you start across there, you come round, and then you come to here. So that waterfall shot there, the entire thing was digital. It had to be, purely because there was no 2D footage that we could work with that had that, because it got so much perspective change and dynamicism in the shot. There's no way it had to be totally digital. So all the rocks was modelled and matte painted. All the water was fluid sims. The splash layer themselves was about 30, 40 different layers of simulations, from the underlying drops to the splashes on the top to the interacting with the rocks, for breaking around the side of the rock itself. So, and that was one of the last few shots that we finalised on. And then Pavan, one of our comp artists, put it all together, and it was created the massive drop down there, and utilised some photography that I'd shot from a plane for the ground elements and whatever kind of thing.